The builder and the growth bar step once more towards each other. Today, we're going to talk about why even your growth strategy belongs into your code base. This is going to be from the perspective of a non-technical founder. So even I have found out that over time, everything that lived in my Notion slowly moved over. And this is the story that I want to tell you today, and the unexpected capability improvements this had for the agents that I use like Claude Opus in my Claude Code environment. So a lot of work got done since I've done this, and I want to not hide this from you and share this openly. The first insight I had was when there is no context, the agent is not going to help you, at least not the way you would say, oh, this is at least a 9 out of 10. I quietly observed this since about a year in Pirate Skills, but I didn't consciously think about this. I had all of my knowledge in my OKRs and strategy and marketing stuff in Notion. And it was really nice there. I occasionally used the Notion MCP server to get the data from there back to my coding agent when I, for example, created a newsletter or I created a new landing page. But over time, I observed that the more I communicated in Claude Code with the agent, usually from voice to text, so I could fully download all of my brain's tacit knowledge to the agent, that the agent would take notes in markdown files. And we got into a habit of kind of creating a document folder that was like in parallel to the normal product documentation. And this folder was called Context. And all of my strategy and marketing work went in there. And now there are multiple dozens of files there. And I kind of moved away from Notion. But then after the hackathon with Bridesmaid, my newest startup that I'm building with Christina, is that I didn't have it in there. And I asked myself, like almost unconsciously, like, why does launching seem so hard right now? We built everything in 48 hours. What is happening now? And since I hadn't done it really consciously in Pirate Skills Codebase, I didn't notice that this was the missing part for Bridesmaid. So I observed that the agent just couldn't help me with these kinds of tasks. So let's think about what is currently in your code repo if you're vibe coding your own web app. The agent sees the product and code and user interface like authentication and payment. It has skills folder that are usually related to which tools we are using, maybe a README to work around that. But what it doesn't see is everything that is maybe your strategy on a slide deck, a roadmap, or an event overview in Notion, your objective and key results, your positioning document that maybe lives in Google Docs. And you occasionally copy-paste things between those two areas. But the problem is that the agent can't easily, what developers call like grabbing, across the entire knowledge base and search for certain keywords and see all associated files and make the connection itself. It can use something like I said, the Notion MCP, but those tools are not as precise and not as easily used for the agent and eat up a lot more tokens in the process. So this gave me this insight. Oh, only half of my company's brain was visible to the agent. The other half was completely invisible. And what I should have done from the beginning on is talked all of my strategy, all of my thinking with Christina together, what this product is, all of our design decisions, why we built this into the agent so it could take notes in this context folder. We would have shipped already much faster and to way more people. So how do you put your build and growth elements of your business in your one repo, and why even use a code repository for it? We discussed this last week also in the AI founder mode one. One of the biggest reasons is that all of this context is documented for an agent and can be easily wrapped into skills so that repetitive routines can be quickly automated and brought to a very high level, even if an agent or less experienced human is executing those routines. So what happened? The growth segment of the Pirate Forge was just starting last Wednesday, And I used this opportunity to use Bridesmaid as a very concrete example of how to set up the full growth roadmap strategy in an existing code base along with the product code. And you can read the prompts that I used here in the Growth Codex chapter. This is freely available. This is not just part of the courses. And it prompted me to gather information about the company, create and align with growth goals and the vision I have for the company with Christina. We created OKRs and definite metrics that we wanted to pursue over the next 6 to 12 weeks. And we identified, most importantly, the biggest bottlenecks right now. That is usually what I focus on a week-by-week basis to uncork these bottlenecks. So these prompts resulted in me answering with my voice, with Wispr Flow straight into the Claude Code agent. Let me show this to you. Here you can see the Claude Code conversation from the beginning. I took this prompt from the Growth Codex, and this asked me to clarify what the business is, what the model is, how the team structure is set up, and things like that. And I had a really long conversation during this workshop with the AI. And the AI set up this doc folder on the right-hand side with this context subfolder where it took notes and it automatically grouped them. I didn't guide it yet to create specific documents. And the most important ones I also linked in the article. But for example, in this business document, you can see what is Bridesmaid, what is the domain, who's the audience, what is the general idea behind it, etc. And this entire conversation took quite a while, as you can see, but it really helped me break down my strategy and give not only me a clearer picture of where we stand, but most importantly, the agent, so it can support me much better. Now, what are these documents that are being created? Let's take a look at the folder. It creates itself a little README file often where it indexes all of the different documents so it knows where to look when, so it doesn't always have to check everything and cluster up the context window, but discover the most important files for itself. There is an overview of the business, the team setup, the vision and strategy, the goals and targets in concrete metrics, the bottlenecks that we are currently perceiving, the very first beginnings of the acquisition strategy, and then very, very concrete this quarter's OKRs. Yeah, these are objectives and key results, which are usually used to create projects in Linear to pursue that are big clusters of to-dos where I hunt these goals, these objectives, and these key results. All of these files are properly cross-referenced, and now the product and the growth-related strategy things live in the same repo. It has one memory accessible to one or many agents, and you can take the prompts that led me there at the bottom of this article and from the Growth Codex. One of the best things that happens is that without consciously noticing it, I observed that a knowledge base about my business was created that writes and updates itself. I hate writing like stale SOP files that are out of date in 3 weeks and at the latest in 6 months. At the pace this industry is changing at the moment. So it creates its own documentation. And the best thing is that if anything is out of date and I notice it in the conversation with the agent, I or Christina can just give it feedback and say, hey, we are not doing it this way. This is what we're currently focused on. Please remember that, update the skill, update the documentation. And the next time we do the routine, it's improved. If you want to read a bit more about that, in last week's AI Founder Mode article, I gave you the 4-step process to create this skill generation loop, if you're not familiar with that already. Another huge thing for me was that the AI has an immense amount of context coming from the Codebase. So when we decided in the acquisition strategy that we're going to have Instagram ads in there, it looked around the Codebase and it decided, you know what, we need to track attributions for this ad so we know which channel, campaign, and creative is actually working well for the audience and might be even already profitable for the business. So we need to set up conversion events in post hoc. We need to save UTM parameters. We need to do server-side tracking from Meta through the so-called CAPI. And all of this, I didn't brief. And it created this wonderful, we get to that in a second, linear issue, which is essentially a to-do for me and the agent for a future task that I have to do by June the 2nd, that is assigned to me, that is high priority, that already has the key context from the code base, also from my strategic document in there. So when we do the technical implementation, that, to be honest, 99 out of 100% will be done by the agent. And my job is to be responsible for ensuring that this has actually worked. Events are arriving in post hoc, conversion events are happening and correctly tracked after the campaign has been running. But it got this because it was living in a code base that already had a very opinionated stack. If you're interested in the stack, we use NextForge. It's a bit of an advanced template. If you ask me, I would probably redo it with what I call the Pirate Launch Kit. It's also one of the articles 2 or 3 weeks ago that we published. And it got all of this information from there. If it wasn't already correct, which I was super impressed that it was, I could have easily now said, no, we're not using server-side tracking with Meta. We want to route everything through pipelines in post hoc, if I had that opinion. I love how it's doing that. But for example, I could now say, you know what? We forgot about cookie consent with this server-side tracking. Now let me show you how easy that is of an update here. Let's go back to Claude Code. And I have this whole conversation here. And so it knows all of this context. So let's ask it here. Can you let me know if in our current OKRs and projects, we have considered that we need to take care of proper cookie consent with Ayubenda, and that we respect users' choices when, for example, doing the attribution tracking? See if it wrote Ayubenda correctly. Now, this is a really complex question, and you will now see it grabbing around in the code base, looking maybe at linear tickets. We will get to that in a second, and trying to understand this question, the context, if it's already planned for or not. So let's give it a little second until it's done. All right, here's the answer streaming in. It says, oh, honestly, we didn't consider this. It's a real gap. You are about right. So what is it suggesting? If we want to do this right, we need to have the Ayubenda banner online. We need consent categories, lots of things. So now it's asking me, hey, do you want me to create the linear issues for this? Linear is our project management tool. And I'll just say document it in 2 places, once in the code base, once in linear. I think linear is plenty enough. And it says, for example, here, the linear MCP server is disconnected. It'll try another way to get there, but we shall see. Here we can now see that it's actually creating a blocker in linear. So if we do not have consent already figured out, we shouldn't be setting up server-side tracking. Very good thing. Now, before I show you this in linear, let's return back to the article. But this should already show you that this is heavily supporting me with project management and ensuring that if I notice something missing, and I didn't prepare this just came to mind. This is how I work. I could just tell it, and I get a very sophisticated conversation going. Now, without this context co-located to my code base, it would have probably generated a pretty generic ticket like, hey, we need to set up conversion tracking, maybe even with the tool I suggested called Ayubenda. But it wouldn't have known that we are working in a Next.js environment, how Ayubenda would like to do this. It can already do the research, document it, think about how does this relate to maybe the meta ads tracking on the client and the server side. All things that you don't even have to understand from a technical point of view. I also have only a certain depth to the understanding of it, but Since I've been doing founding for 15 years now, I've come across it many times, had many opportunities to learn more about it. But there is always a layer I don't understand. For example, how to actually integrate this in a code base on a line-by-line basis. But that's what I got Claude for, right? Another cool example is, what if I now want to launch Instagram and Pinterest? I said, like, I'm a bit annoyed by how little we have done yet for marketing Bridesmaid. So just a few family or friends people are coming in. So why haven't we been posting on Pinterest and Instagram? The main reason is that we haven't taken the time to build the content and storytelling framework, which is usually part 2 of the Growth Codex. So we already have set up a lot of context in business and in the vision and strategy, that it will be much easier for us to create extended context that defines our clear positioning, the way we talk about our business, why we do this whole thing, and on which channels we would like to focus on. So making everything become more and more concrete. We can even go as crazy as thinking, okay, if our growth strategy lives alongside our code, can't we leverage that to use more advanced SEO strategies like a programmatic library of the locations that our users search that are well SEO and GEO optimized, so we have better inbuilt discoverability? This can end up, just as a little side note, as an idea in Linear. But this is the big advantage of what happens when growth context also lives in the same place where your product context is. I hope this was convincing already. You can ask comments below if you want me to clarify things for you. But the next big thing is, how do we get this abstract strategy into concrete weekly to-dos? We always organize ourselves in sprints or cycles, as the word is in Linear. I don't want to do this project management circus myself. I want the agent to do this. So what we can do is we use the Linear MCP server that you just saw in action in Claude Code and can ask it, based on the OKRs, can you set up the projects and issues? So let's take a look at that again. Here it said that it created certain issues, translate that to to-dos, and let's open some of them. This opens Linear, and Linear is a project management tool. And here's, for example, the concrete, already documented issue for the consent management. And you can see it's already pretty well documented and linked to certain parts of the code base, wired to the analytics events. And this makes it much easier later for an agent to pick up this task, already know the context that I've discussed before, so I don't have to repeat myself so often. And this is part of the paid acquisition project, which has a nice overview and a list of issues that now have been reorganized by the simple change that I've done. Timelines have automatically changed, dependencies have been created. And if I don't like anything in here, I can just tell Claude and it will do those updates for me. All of these issues are documented as well as what you just saw. When I later go deeper in my content marketing and storytelling framework, I can then say, for the landing pages and the initial ad batches, could you please reference our content and storytelling framework? So the ad copy, it's suggesting to me that I still need to polish until I wrap it into a skill that is good enough to be repeated. It will create much better result than if I hadn't collocated that with the strategy and the content and storytelling context in the same code base. Let's go one more level up, see the entire project overview. None of these projects were created by me. All of this stuff has been done or started during the hackathon. Everything is documented, so Christina and I always know who's currently doing what has already been completed and what not. And this was another one of the OKRs, the organic launch, because we believe organic is the backbone of all good customer acquisition, because it forces us to create things people really, really like. And then paid acquisition is essentially because we do not have the patience to wait the organic to grow over 6 months. And here we see a list of the issues it created for the organic growth here. And I can go into everything and see, like, what do I have to do next? But wait, do I really have to figure that out myself? Let's ask the agent. Could you please figure out, the linear agents, what of the 3 big OKR projects we should tackle concretely and who of us in the team should tackle what? Maybe the 3 most important next tasks for each person. Now, this is asking a lot of the agent. It should need to know like who's in the team, who's responsible for what. It would need to review all of the linear projects that we have mentioned, and we shall see how it ends up. Here it is grabbing the up to 50 issues that are in these projects. No worries, there are no 50 issues in here. And it now looks at them content-wise and sees what makes sense when. What due dates have we set up? Who is the right person to do what? And let's see what it figures out. And here's our answer streaming in. Let's give it a little bit more space. So what is it suggesting? It has some shared first moves. That is interesting. So it didn't just blindly tell me what to do. Number 1 is define weekly build and grow ritual together. And secondly, hold that weekly ritual. This is our commitment to build and grow Bridesmaid without missing a full week. Then for me, first of all, it knows that I'm doing it and it correctly attributes to me, set up the Meta Business Manager stuff. I should handle the cookie consent with Ayubenda and the track link infrastructure. Fine. So what does it have for Christina? It assigns to her to finalize the Instagram and Pinterest profiles. Also fits perfectly from what I think she would like to do, and to start creating the first content pillars and design the weekly public digest template, which is our newsletter. All right. I like this. I can agree with this. I cannot agree with this. I can ask it to make the necessary updates in linear. To me, this looks fine. And I say yes. And all of this is properly assigned and set with proper due dates and estimated time resources this needs inside of linear. And I think that is how, without much project management scenario, we can go from a pretty strong but still abstract strategy to what do I do today? What do I do next? And really get done fast. And you can even ask the agent to pick up tasks for you if you think they don't need to input and you just review the results. Back to the article. I think if you remember this sounds a lot like what we did with vibe management in the beginning. But this just had the idea of having a linear project. I wasn't there yet with also having all of the strategic context in my code base. But this has proven to be the right choice. I'm very curious to see where this is going to end up being, if Codebase is the right choice. You can already see companies like Notion becoming afraid of this and really changing their strategy by, for example, just this week introducing the developer platform and the Notion CLI, because it kind of makes sense that all of these documents don't just live in a technical code base, but are visible through a more non-technical friendly interface like Obsidian or Notion. And they want a piece of the cake, but they see that the industry is shifting to what I'm explaining to you today. So how can you get started with this for yourself? Take an afternoon, maybe 2 hours out of your very busy schedule, I know, and take the following 3 prompts and do them in 3 steps. The first prompt is truly the foundational interview. Do this inside the live code base. If you don't have a code base, just open an empty folder in Claude Code. If you don't have Claude Code, use something like Claude Cowork and copy this in here and just use voice to text to answer the question, to add anything that you feel is missing to lay the foundation for this interview. The second part is to derive a strategic layer from that. So take the second prompt and let it ask you what your vision and strategy is, maybe what your growth strategy already is in terms of like your acquisition strategy, and help it guide you through generating the first sets of objective and key results. My recommendation, plan them for 6 to 12 weeks. I usually do 1 quarter, and I set my goals so that I have a 70% chance to achieving them. So I have to stretch myself a little bit. And then if you don't already have a project management tool, I recommend using Linear for that. It has a generous free tier, and this is going to help you set up your Linear project, set up the Linear MCP server, and take those OKRs and set up real projects to get these OKRs done and into reality. And that is the whole Codebase strategy setup I wanted to share with you today. And I hope you take the time, just maybe the first 30 minutes, to take this foundational layer and get into the habit of doing this. But the more you use your agents to do the work with you and give it feedback and continually take responsibility for the outcomes and guide the agent to the right solutions and wrap these processes into skills, the more you will see that this just runs and goes and goes and goes. And if more humans join your company, they can build on top of these skills, and they will be working productively in your team so much quicker than you're used to. If you normally think, okay, we need to have a 6-week ramp-up time to get a person productive, make that maybe 6 days. If topics like this would be interesting to you, I highly recommend reading up on the Vibe Management article that even goes deeper into my setup, how I have it with Pirate Skills and Linear, and last week's article on the AI Founder Mode, how to create these skills. I hope this was interesting for you. Please share your experience with me in the comments, in the WhatsApp group, and anywhere you like. If you are interested in going deeper with this, we have the Pirate Labs that now combine the Builder and Growth Labs almost on a weekly basis. Every Wednesday afternoon, Berlin time, we sit together in a free Zoom call and exchange the latest ideas. So this article is, of course, my opinion piece, but every Wednesday after I publish this article on Monday to our newsletter that you can sign up for by joining any event that you like, we will discuss this deeper. And I would love to see you then. Bye-bye.